All right, it finally worked. I pressed the button and we get some recording. Welcome back to Senator Bruce Tarr, the Senate Minority Leader in the state of Massachusetts. Senator, welcome back.
Thanks, Rick. Great to be back with you and be here with Bill as well.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. You know, Senator, before we get into some serious stuff, which we always seem to do, I know that one of the joys of your job, I'm guessing, is you get to go around and salute people. You get to go to banquets, you get to go to birthday parties, and you get to present people with citations from the Senate, from the state, maybe from the governor, that lift people. And you have one recently here from Gloucester, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, and maybe about, that if you in fact do get joy from these things, what it might feel like.
Well, I sure do. I get joy, and it's certainly one of the highlights in many weeks of what we do. And what you're referring to, Rick, is the ability to give a Senate citation. And the House also has that ability. They have citations. And what these are used for is to recognize accomplishments of individuals. It might be a teacher who is retiring after a number of years of service. It might be a local official in the same capacity. Or it might just be someone who's been doing good things for a long time and deserves to have a little bit of recognition. And that was the case with Mary Jane Mclennan, who actually got her citation this week. I was happy actually to have a chance to go out to Annisquam, Rick, because I've been at the State House an awful lot, and it was a beautiful sunny day to go visit Mary Jane. And she received recognition as an unsung heroine. And that is an award that's reserved for women across our state who do good things, but oftentimes don't get the recognition that they deserve. And every year, we are allowed as legislators to nominate people for the Unsung Heroine Award. Representative Ferranti actually nominated Mary Jane. I was pleased to join in that effort. And so what happened because of the pandemic is that we weren't able to have the usual celebration here at the State House for our unsung heroines. Usually we have a luncheon here and a gathering of all of them, and it's really impressive to see and be part of that. But in the wake of not being able to do that, I still wanted to recognize Mary Jane and went directly to her to bring the citation and take a couple of pictures. And she's just such a wonderful person. And for folks that may not be familiar with her, she has been active in the community for many, many years, and most notably and most recently has been one of the driving forces behind the Grace Center, the day center for folks who are homeless, that allows them to come and have a place not only to be, but also to get help with things like writing a resume or finding further education or actually finding more permanent housing. And Mary Jane has given so much of herself and is such a bright, shining beacon of optimism and dedication and service that it really was a great joy to present her with the citation.
Well, Senator Tarr, as we watch you, we see that you're in your Senate office in Boston, and but the 2-week countdown is on for this session. So share with us what's ahead, or what has happened here in the final, as you're down into crunch time, or the 2-week warning, so to speak. Yeah.
Great question, Bill. And let me just go back first and say that under the rules of the legislature, we end formal sessions on July 31st. And what that means is that in a formal session, and when we take up things that might be controversial or for which there will be debate or there'll be a roll call vote, under the Constitution, we still have to meet every 72 hours, regardless of what month we're in. But when we're not in formal session, we're in informal session, and we take up more routine matters. And in the informal session, any member can object to anything coming up. So the serious business that you want to get accomplished, you have to do by the 31st, which does give us 2 weeks. And the most notable thing that people are probably thinking about right now, Bill, is what do we do with the state budget? We don't have a state budget for the current fiscal year that began on July 1st, and we're not likely to have one by July 31st. So what we'll likely do is pass another interim budget. And really, the reason that we'll do that is because we don't have a clear revenue picture. So we're waiting to see what the feds are going to do in terms of the next relief package, and we are hoping in the most serious of ways that we are going to get some additional relief from them to help balance the state budget. And you may recall that we had postponed the tax deadline for income tax filings to July 15th. And of course, that is just recently behind us. So we're trying to see what we're going to get in terms of income tax returns. So my sense is that we still won't have a state budget, a full state budget by the end of the month. But what we will have is an interim budget. There's no fear of a shutdown. Nothing will be stopped. We will pass an interim measure and then likely come back sometime in the fall to be able to do a full budget for the state.
There's other bills that have been passed, right? The Triple E bill and more on restaurants and so on.
Things are still happening, Bill, and they're likely to continue. There'll be a lot of people working over this weekend and into next week and the week after that. The Triple E bill is really important because I think many of us will remember late last summer what we saw with Eastern equine encephalitis and the outbreaks, and the fact that many youth sports activities had to be either canceled or moved to earlier in the day. They couldn't be held in the evening. And that experience pointed up some gaps in our system. So what this bill does is allow the state mosquito control board to be able to do things that it needs to do to fill in those gaps. But something that's very important to me is that we also try to protect pollinators. So the bill builds in some protections around notification and trying to exempt particular areas, but it gives the board the ability to do things of an emergency nature and of a stronger nature to combat that. On a different subject, with regard to the bill relative to alcohol delivery, I think you may remember that because of the pandemic, we did authorize restaurants to deliver beer and wine as part of a takeout order. Now we're getting into more serious alcoholic beverages, cocktails, and what the bill says is that you can deliver up to 64 ounces of alcohol in a sealed container with a takeout order. And restaurants are telling us that that's really important to their ability to generate some extra revenue, which they desperately need right now. Yeah. And then last but not least, Bill, we did finally pass something that has been in the process for quite a while, and that is a supplemental budget to spend money on things related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we hope and expect that at least 75% of the things that are authorized for spending in that bill will be reimbursed by the federal government. And that's the reason that this is important. If we didn't have that authorization and we spent that money and then tried to get reimbursed, it probably wouldn't work. So now we've got something in place to maximize our federal reimbursement.
Senator, I want to ask you one. I want to revisit the police reform bill that the Senate passed. I've talked with people just anecdotally, and on each side of the issue, people are asking who was involved in blah, blah, blah. What's your sense as to where this is going in terms of with the House or in terms of this session? Because again, one of the things that has stood out in my conversation with people is that they were hoping that there would be more police involvement in this. And I mentioned that to you the other day, but what's your sense of where this thing stands now?
Well, I had that hope too, Rick. But one of the things that I would say is that the bill is now before the House. In the Senate, it was one of the most difficult environments that I've ever been in approximately 30 years in the legislature, of trying to balance having a proper oversight and accountability system for those in law enforcement and ensuring that those who might be the victims of abuse have the proper protections and the ability to get redress when an abuse occurs. And unfortunately, I think the bill moved too fast. I think we should have had more public process. There were certainly a lot of conversations with people in law enforcement and people with many different perspectives. But in my caucus, we tried repeatedly to delay consideration of the bill so that we could have more of those conversations. We ultimately wound up voting at 4 a.m. on this bill after I'd called for votes at 8 p.m. and at 12 p.m. to cease the session so that we could come back the next day. I was unsuccessful, and I think that's unfortunate. But in the end, we wound up trying to make a decision on a bill where there were many unanswered questions, and many of those unanswered questions were about an issue called qualified immunity, which has to do with a defense that public servants can raise, including police officers, if they feel they acted appropriately and perhaps maybe made a mistake. It doesn't exonerate them, but allows them to raise a defense. And because of that, many of us felt uncomfortable with the situation that we were in. And you might have seen my comments in the media. I believe that 80% to 90% of this bill is something that everyone could agree on. And I would have hoped that we would have taken those components that we would agree on and move forward and spend some more time and gather some experts to talk about the subjects where there was less clarity, like qualified immunity. And because I was frustrated with that and because we didn't get a public hearing, I voted present, which I've only done 2 times in my entire time in the legislature. That's how strongly I felt about wanting to get more answers, but wanting to also signify that I agreed with many things in the bill, but some things in the bill were just too deeply concerning to act upon without more information. My prediction is, Rick, that we will see a bill at some point before the end of the session. My expectation is the House will take up a bill next week. We don't know yet what will be in that bill, but it will likely be significantly different than the Senate bill. And then we will go to a conference committee of 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate to reconcile the differences between them with the clock ticking to be able to get something to the governor. Because when that conference committee finishes its work, then a conference committee report goes to the House and to the Senate, and members get only 1 vote, and that's to accept the report or not accept the report. It's not amendable. And so this is a very intense process. I'm hoping to be one of the members of that conference committee to continue to work here and try to find a resolution so that we can take action, but action that does not jeopardize the ability of the people who protect us to do their job, and action that ensures that people who may suffer harm have the appropriate way to address that harm.
Senator, I have one last question for you, and it's kind of COVID-19 related. Also, I know you're close with the governor. You're on the phone or whatever, and meetings, conference calls, and so on. But what are you hearing about schools, or when will we hear about schools and what the governor will propose, or in relation to what he will get from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and so on? And so what's the latest that you can share with us? I know you don't have anything definitive, but what can you share with us?
So I just actually was on the phone with the governor.
I knew it, yeah.
Before we started this discussion. And we have seen guidance that's been issued by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education from Commissioner Riley. And essentially it contemplates a return to school in the regular time frame in the fall. And as you know, depending on which school district we're in, that can be a different day and maybe even a different week, but generally in the fall. And the idea is that districts are being asked to prepare 3 plans. One is a plan to have everyone back in the classroom, but with restrictions, keeping the desks 6 feet apart and making sure the students and the staff have masks and things are sanitized. The second part of the plan would be remote learning in case people can't come back into the buildings. And the third would be some combination of the first 2. It's a very fluid situation. The discussion is happening every single day, Bill, about what to do. And people really want to get this right because they want to make sure that our students are safe, our staff and our teachers are safe. So it's a very, very fluid situation. But right now, people are in the planning mode for those 3 contingencies.
Well, Senator, I guess I won't be seeing you at Good Harbor Beach this weekend, but I wish you a good weekend.
Well, you know what, Rick, since we're both residents, we could see each other there, but you won't
see me there.
No, Bill
right?
won't be there.
Well, you won't be seeing me there either, but that's not because I don't like being on the water. It's because we have a lot to do, and I'll be working on it, and I'm honored to be able to do that and to be able to serve in this capacity, particularly now at this challenging time. But I do look forward, Rick, to seeing you. You're one of the most persistent exercisers that I've ever seen. So I know you'll be running by the house, and hopefully I'll see you in passing and I can give you a wave.
Good Lord willing. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you both.